What I tried to do is to look at the way that the cotton economy developed between the 1960s and the 1980s, and how that economy fit into the broader Soviet economy. Tajikistan provides a large amount of cotton. It's about 1/5 of what Uzbekistan provides each year, but it's still, a quite significant, 1 million tons or so forth. Each year. They get a lot less in cash value than that cotton provides in value to the budget, because part of that cotton can be exported. But more importantly, actually, statistically, a large proportion of this cotton is used to produce cotton cloth and cotton clothes, which are then sold across the USSR and are taxed. Using the so-called turnover tax, the налог с оборота. This tax all goes to the republics in which the cloth or clothes are being produced, which is not Tajikistan, right? In the early 1980s, about 90 to 95% of all of the cotton picked in Tajikistan is then used to produce clothing or cloth outside of Tajikistan. So this means that 90-95% of all of the tax revenue is being essentially denied to the Republican budget and is going to other Republican budgets and the federal Soviet budget. What we're looking at is development, right? So the USSR basically said, many decades before, we want to use development and we want to use this sort of equalization, they called it vyravnivание, right? So equalizing economic opportunity and equalizing economic output. And what we're going to do is sort of balance out variations that occur in a market system. So, if this were a market system, the price of cotton would go up and down, but here we're holding it steady. We're providing a steady source of resources. We're providing steady investment. And even though you may have one good year where you'll provide more value to us, depending upon rain and crop and things we can't predict, one year you'll have a bad year and we'll balance it out. And I think this allows us to rethink how the economy was working in general in the early to mid-1980s. And in my experience, in fact, the Tajik economy was quite successful in those years. It had growth overall. It had productivity growth. It saw investment per capita growth year on year into the mid to late 1980s. You have salary growth at the same time. People's standards of living are also increasing, at least until 1987. So from that perspective, you have a populace that's largely happy and has good reason to be happy with the Soviet project into the mid to late 1980s, which is quite different from many other places in the USSR. So 1987 is kind of a key year, and what happens in 1987 is a series of reforms are passed by the central government in Moscow. So you have the law on enterprises, the Закон о предприятиях, which changes the ways that enterprises can keep profits and use profits for different purposes. You also have the law on cooperatives, these so-called. So what would happen in practice, and I've conducted some interviews with people who founded cooperatives, say in 1987 and 88 in Tajikistan, is that the manager of a particular enterprise would found, or his family member would found, a cooperative officially under the enterprise, so при предприятии, which would then take contracts from the enterprise to fulfill certain duties of that enterprise at a higher rate than it would have cost the enterprise to do it itself. The enterprise had been given the right to transfer a larger sum of money without any oversight to its contract partners, in this case, the new cooperative. And the cooperatives, very interestingly, were given the right to turn non-cash money into cash without any restrictions. It also, created incentives for people to get involved in the cooperative business and to do things like, the first cooperatives that show up in Dushanbe that are making money are shashlik stands. So people are selling very expensive shashlik, to whom we don't know, but they're making money. You also see, cooperatives in the construction business, building private homes, but all of them are basically taking goods from enterprises for free or at very low cost and using that to make cash. And over time, what this does is it siphons off goods from the productive sector. It siphons off a huge amount of cash from the productive sector, at the same time that the enterprises have also been given the incentive to choose which products they make, and because they can now hold more of their profits, they want to make more profitable, but say less needed products. They want to make more prestige goods and less general demand goods. So over a period of 3 or 4 years, you have the basic availability of goods goes down very drastically. The quality of goods goes down in many cases. And the average person's ability to provide the basic standard of living for themselves and their family that they had before goes down pretty quickly.